Hey there, beautiful people. Welcome back to Green Mountain Mornings on KVT Talk, where Brattleboro listens. I'm your host, Olga Peters, 23 minutes past the top of the hour. And welcome back to the show, Randy Holhut from the Commons. Hello, Randy.
Hello there.
And I want to remind listeners that this segment of Green Mountain Mornings is being filmed by Brattleboro Community Television. It will be online later today, and broadcast of Green Mountain Mornings tonight is sponsored by Brattleboro Savings and Loan. So, Randy, let's talk about aging.
Yes, it sucks.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. I haven't started it yet, so, I wouldn't know.
Well, I'm very at the beginning of it, but, my lovely spouse is further along in the process. But both of us toddled down to the Congregational Church in Dummerston on Sunday for a visit with our neighbors doing Dummerston Cares, doing something on aging well. So our expert witnesses in the aging process were John Wilcox, who's the volunteer who does just about everything in town.
Yes.
Tom Zoff, who is involved with the Historical Society, and abandoned Dummerston for the Brooks House because he wanted to live in the big city before he checks out.
Mm-hmm. He wanted an elevator.
Yes, and be next to Duo. Mm-hmm. And the expert witness of the most expert of the expert witnesses, who's the cover girl on the front page this week, Mary Lou Schmidt, as in Bill Schmidt's spouse. Mm-hmm. She's 91. She's been suffering from MS since the 70s.
Oh, wow.
And it's only reluctantly got off the tractor a few years ago.
Mm-hmm. And that's not a metaphor, I suspect.
No, not a metaphor.
Meant she really has been driving a tractor.
Very much so. So, a certain amount of determination goes with the aging process, and they talked about what Dummerston has a lot of old people in it, older people in it. Mm-hmm. Not much of a surprise, but how do you grow older gracefully? And the common denominators are being involved in the community.
Okay.
Staying active and engaged. Mm-hmm. Paying attention to your body.
Okay.
Getting to the doctor when you can.
Yep.
But not being stuck in your ways when you have a chance to do something new.
Which is interesting because most people, and in fact my coworker and I were talking about it this morning, get more stuck in their ways as they get older. Well,
Mary Lou was diagnosed with MS in 1978, and she's a big believer in the serenity prayer. God, give me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. The kind of mantra from Alcoholics Anonymous and other 10-step programs. But for Mary Lou, she took it as a way to try and get through the challenge of a major health crisis, and that and scoliosis came along after that.
Ooh.
So, but she's been keeping up with her medical help and staying as active as you can possibly be, and she's 91 now, and still hanging in there. Mm-hmm. So she was the one who offered the most advice. So she said, "Don't be proud. Use an aid like a walker. I've used a walker for 23 years. Watch your nutrition. Watch out for salt. Don't eat spicy foods. Install hand bars in your home. If you live alone, get a medical alert and use it." So they sold their farm a couple of years ago to the Mannixes, the ones who run Walker Farm. Mm-hmm. But they can still stay in their house.
Oh, good. Well, and that's an interesting thing, too. A lot of these old New England houses have not necessarily been set up for fall prevention and a lot of the things that elders tend to think about.
Yeah, but their house, they've set up their house more or less for that.
Okay.
So they also talked about, decluttering is a must. Mm-hmm. get your advance directives in order because you have to.
Joanna will be happy about that.
Joanna will be very happy about that. And also, if you're thinking about getting a little bit of help, if you really feel that it's time, the assisted suicide laws in Vermont involve some lead time, and not every doctor goes along with the law. So you have to make sure that who you're seeing will do it, because it takes two physicians.
Okay. We only have about a minute left, but did the guests talk about anything in our society or culture or policy that makes aging harder?
Not really, because they've pretty much accepted this is what is. That, Tom Zoff quoted Barbara Ehrenreich, who's just wrote a book about aging, and Barbara Ehrenreich saying that Americans treat aging as an outrage and sin. And Tom said that people should age less timidly.
Ah.
So, and Tom's advice is, argue when you feel like arguing. Have a rich meal every now and then, he said. Give up the country life for the bustle of the city, in his case, Brattleboro. Have some fun. Have a positive attitude.
Okay. Well, thank you. And on that note, we're going to hand you off to Natalie Knowles, but Randy and I will return after the break. Welcome back. This is Green Mountain Mornings on KVT Talk, where Brattleboro listens. I'm your host, Olga Peters, 37 minutes from the top of the hour. And my guest, Randy Holhut from the Commons, is on the phone. How are you, Randy?
We had a bear raid last night.
Yes, we interrupt this news broadcast to bring you a public service announcement about bears.
Yes. Have you got your bird feeder out? Don't.
Yeah, it's time to take it in.
The bears are awake and they are about. And we had a visit last night around 7 o'clock by a big black bear. Joyce was the first person in this house to sight him. He was about 5 feet away from where our bird feeder normally hangs, but our bird feeder has no seat in it. So he kind of sniffed and looked and came to the conclusion, nah, not worth it.
Too much work.
and waddled down the hill to where our trash is in a locked enclosure, kind of a mini dumpster. And sniffed around that and figured, can't break that one either. And then waddle over the hill to find something else to break into. So the bears are out. So secure your trash, take away in your compost piles, and take in your bird feeders, and don't give the bears a reason to stop by your house. Yeah,
because as Randy was mentioning off air, if they know there's food available, they will tell other bears in their own bear language, and you will be part of the route and the regular circuit that they do through neighborhoods.
Well, they all have. There are bear trails, and we've had the bears have been around here for the last few years, just visiting, and us and other people on here on our hill in Dummerston, and so there's a bear trail. I don't know if there's a little Bears Zagat where they consult, Randy and Joyce's 3 stars, really good garbage. No waiting.
They probably do.
Like that.
Yes. Yes, I'm sure. But yes, folks, secure your garbage, secure your compost, take in your bird feeder because the bears are awake.
Yes.
Now, Randy.
Mm-hmm.
Have you gotten caught in a speed trap lately?
No, I've not, because the last speed trap I got was the speed trap we all know about, Wilmington Center, back about when I first got here. Because I thought the cool thing about Vermont was they only have one speed limit sign. It's the one on the border. It says speed limit 50 miles an hour unless otherwise posted.
Mm-hmm. It's the unless part you got to pay attention to there.
Yes, because And we all know the kind of the notorious speed traps around. So Wilmington Center, definitely. Chester Center.
Yes.
And then by the stone houses going out of Chester. But I was surprised at how far down they were on the list.
How far Wilmington was down?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Randy and I are referencing an article or a bunch of work done by Vermont Public Radio looking at towns and how they use speeding tickets. Some use them for revenue, some are not so much, but they went through all the towns in Vermont and kind of ranked them by how much money they bring in revenue and how much that is per person, which gets a little wonky because towns vary so much in population in Vermont. But Wilmington, as far as Windham County is concerned, was the first town listed. It ranked number 20-something on VPR's list. But yeah, they bring in thousands of dollars in speeding tickets. And
the rest of the towns in Windham County kind of fell off sharply, right down to Halifax, which only wrote one ticket.
Yeah.
In Windham. And
that's because the state police happened to be there that day.
Yeah, the towns that have high speeding tickets either have their own police departments, or their constables vigorously enforce the speeding laws, like Mount Tabor, which was tops of the list.
Yeah.
Up near Rutland, and they take care of a good chunk of their town budget by writing speeding tickets.
Mm-hmm.
And also, you notice from the list that VPR accumulated that was all concentrated on the ski roads, so Route 100 and Route 30.
Yep. Well, that's one thing that when I saw the numbers for Wilmington, which are very high, that's the first thing I thought of is ski season.
Yeah, it's a fish in a barrel.
Mm-hmm.
And Win Hall was high on the list because of Stratton, and Londonderry because of Magic Mountain, and and Bromley.
Yep. Brattleboro was relatively low on the list, especially for the Windham County towns, and I was surprised by that.
Well, I think because they're busy, they're too busy doing other things to do traffic enforcement.
Right.
I mean, that's
good point.
Chief Fitzgerald's boys and girls have a lot on their plate, and I think traffic enforcement is way down on the list. I mean, the only times I see them doing radar enforcement or just kind of sitting by the road looking to pounce on somebody is very late at night, early in the morning. When things are relatively calm.
I tend to see them a lot early in the morning on Route 30 when I'm coming into work.
Yeah, I mean, so that's fish in the barrel.
Yeah, by the retreat and the retreat farm.
Yeah, that's another one of those speed traps. I've gotten stopped and warned there, but that was a long time ago too. Mm-hmm. But they like hiding in the retreat buildings.
Yes. Yep. So what was your takeaway with looking at this data from VPR?
Well, if you've towns that need money, we'll do this. I mean, it's not as bad as some other places in the country which are notorious for using their police forces as supplemental income, like say Ferguson, Missouri.
Revenue generating.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that was my takeaway from VPR too, was looking at, as you noted, how heavily the ski roads are covered. And I suspect because people aren't used to driving those roads, it is fish in a barrel. They probably speed a lot. I know I get passed on Route 30 quite often.
Massachusetts, Connecticut, New York.
Mm-hmm. New Jersey.
Our friends from southern New England and New York tend to go very fast, regardless of conditions. Those are the folks you also see in the median strip during snowstorms.
Or as my mom says, four-wheel drive only works when all four wheels are on the road. When two are on ice or in the snowbank, it doesn't work so well. But my other takeaway was you could really see kind of who had full-time police forces, who didn't, and who had a lot to deal with as a town and who didn't, in comparisons. So I found their work really interesting on VPR. You kind of get a slice of life from this little thing called a speeding ticket.
Well, especially when the state splits the money with the town.
Right. And speaking of the state, did you see the governor's statement about quote unquote squandered savings for teachers, taxpayers, and kids?
Oh, you didn't take my deal on health insurance last year, so now you're going to have to pay for it this year. Wah!
I take it you did see the statement then.
Yes, I did. It came into the mailbox, my mailbox too, from his press office. But he's trying the same stuff he pulled last year at the end of the session of trying to pull an April surprise and attacking a very familiar foe. Let's go after the teachers. They're overpaid. They've got way too many benefits. Who do they think they are?
Yeah, there's too many of them.
Yeah.
Well, and he also is going after the small schools, but also the fact that there are so many different districts and so many different schools who are negotiating things individually is another one of his kind of bugaboos.
Well, that they're among the few workers in Vermont that have a union.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Which usually means you get paid better. And even though that Vermont's teachers are among the bottom half in the country for compensation. Mm-hmm. I mean, we'd like to think, the Vermont schools routinely rank at the top of the list for achievement and for class size and for high school graduation and everything else, but the compensation for teachers is down, around, I think it was around in the 30s.
Okay, that sounds right.
Not quite as bad as Mississippi or West Virginia, but not good. Mm-hmm. But the other thing that Phil Scott approved, and I think, given how much agitation there's been around here about the implications of Act 46,
right,
is his idea that he's going to mandate teacher-student ratios.
Yes,
staffing ratios. And if you have too many teachers, you will be penalized for doing that.
Which,
let's see, Vermont's schools, once, as I said a couple of minutes ago, routinely rank among the tops in the country. Mm-hmm. So why would you get rid of the teachers?
Well, and it's not just teachers. He's talking about staffing ratios in general. And that, when you just look at numbers and ratios, what they don't tell you are things like how many special needs students does a school have? How many behavioral issues are paraeducators dealing with? How many one-on-ones or individual education plans do schools have? I mean, it's not, because students have so many needs now, and so many of the needs are becoming acute. Teachers and support staff like paraeducators are taking on things that are not as simple as, does the kid know how to read and write?
Yeah, it comes, is the kid socialized? Is the kid healthy?
Are they coming to school
fed? Is the kid fed?
Yeah.
Is the kid being beaten at home?
Right. And straight looking at staffing ratios just cannot consider those type of factors that may require more staffing if you are going to meet the students' needs.
And it also affects, small schools like, say, Dummerston School. Mm-hmm. The enrollment is low for our school. Mm-hmm. But once again, this is trying to find another wedge to get schools to consolidate.
Right. Well, this is my thoughts, and Some people agree with me, some people they don't. I think the governor wants a top-down education structure where the state controls everything and to just do away with local control, which you could argue since Act 60 came in has been the case anyways. But instead of just coming out and saying, this is what I want to do, and here are some of my plans to achieve that, now everybody discuss. He's kind of going at things sideways and chipping away here and chipping away there and creating, if we end up with another kind of showdown like we did at the last legislative session, that's not really where good policy is made.
Unless, of course, you're taking some pages from the Koch brothers playbook,
which is the other rumor going around. Yes.
and that's the fear. I mean, that weakening public education is one of the bedrock principles of Kochism. Mm-hmm. Of that, the government money shouldn't be used for public education. There shouldn't be public education.
Right. Which is so counterintuitive to what we have done as a country traditionally.
It's pretty much what created our country, mm-hmm. the idea of universal public schooling and giving everyone, to the best of their ability, a chance to an opportunity to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
And it hasn't always been honored, and certainly for people of color, it took the better part of a century and a half to bust down the racial barriers that kept them from having the equality of opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And there's still, for depending on where you're at, it depends on what kind of quality of education you get.
Mm-hmm.
There's some states that are still using 30-year-old textbooks and crumbling schools and under 30 people in a classroom and every other ill.
Yep.
But this is it's so stupid to think like that in terms of you want to get to economic development. A good education system draws people to your state, which mm-hmm. we see in Vermont. People who come to Vermont cite that as a reason for coming here.
Right, young families.
Great schools.
Mm-hmm.
Good and a strong community, which a good school system helps foster.
Yes.
And that good school system also helps create your good workers.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that Vermonters are well known everywhere for ingenuity, for work ethic, for intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been one of our great exports over the decades.
Right, but we don't want to keep exporting people as much as we do.
Well, it's inevitable. It's just we hope they come back.
Yeah.
but yeah, since even before the Civil War, the Vermont was exporting its creative people.
Mm-hmm.
John Deere's plows didn't work so well in Vermont. They worked pretty good out in Ohio and
right
in places where there weren't rocks everywhere.
There's that. Yes.
As one example of a Vermonter who went on to success elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So you really you get what you pay for.
Mm-hmm.
You want a good economy. You want a strong community and strong social fabric. You want a place that's livable and desirable to live in. It starts with good education. And you get what you pay for. You cheap out on education, you get a place that people don't want to live in, a place that people don't want to build in. If you're a business leader,
mm-hmm.
unless all you want are just drones.
Well, that is a good question, and the governor will be in town on Monday, I believe.
Yes, and I'm sure he'll get that question at the chamber dinner. That's at noon at the American Legion Hall on Linden Street in Brattleboro.
I plan to go. Will you go?
I'll go because, of course, Tristan's cooking.
Of course. Well, yeah, if Tristan's cooking, you have to go. So we will resume this conversation with the governor on Monday and report back to everyone. Unfortunately, Randy and I are out of time. So thank you for coming in today, Randy. Or
Thank
calling
you.
in. Always glad to have you.
Okay.
Talk to you next week.